The sun hung low in the sky as the last bell of high school rang, marking the end of a 4-year journey. Emma stood in front of the mirror in the bathroom, staring at her reflection, still in her cap and gown. The tassel swayed gently from side to side, catching the light as she adjusted it. Her fingers trembled slightly, but not from excitement. Instead, it was the weight of uncertainty that pressed down on her, filling her chest with an unfamiliar tightness. She had spent the last few days running on autopilot, smiling for pictures, pretending to enjoy the endless congratulations from teachers and classmates, and nodding along as her friends talked about their bright futures. But as the reality of graduation set in, a new, heavy feeling had settled in her stomach. Everyone was moving forward, excited about their next steps, college, travel, internships. The world was their oyster, and yet Emma felt like she was staring into an abyss. What now? The question buzzed in her mind like a persistent fly, refusing to be swatted away. Her eyes scanned the bathroom, searching for something, anything, to give her a sense of comfort. But there was nothing. She felt utterly lost. The gown she wore, so formal and stiff, seemed like a costume, a facade she had worn for 4 years. But now, standing in the quiet of the bathroom, she couldn't shake the feeling that it no longer fit her. She didn't know who she was anymore, or worse, who she was supposed to be. Outside, the sounds of laughter and excited chatter filtered through the walls. The graduates had gathered in the schoolyard for the final ceremony. Their voices echoed in the hallway, full of energy, joy, and anticipation. But Emma didn't feel that rush of excitement that seemed to engulf everyone else. Instead, she felt a heaviness, like her feet were made of lead. "It's over." She repeated the words in her head, but they didn't feel real. Graduation was supposed to be the beginning of something great, the mark of success, of triumph. And yet, here she was, standing alone, not sure if she should be excited or terrified. For a moment, she considered skipping the ceremony entirely. What was the point of celebrating when she had nothing to celebrate? Everyone else seemed to have it all figured out, while she felt like she was on the outside looking in. Taking a deep breath, she smoothed down her gown and stepped into the hallway. The noise grew louder as she walked toward the schoolyard. Her classmates passed her by, laughing and talking excitedly about their plans for the future. She barely registered their faces, too consumed by the storm brewing in her mind. What was wrong with her? Why didn't she feel the joy everyone else seemed to have? She should have been happy. She had just graduated, for crying out loud. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? She thought of the inspirational video she'd watched the night before. The one that had urged people to look for the silver lining, to keep pushing forward even when everything seemed bleak. But right now, Emma didn't see any silver lining. All she saw was a long road ahead with no clear path. The field outside was filled with classmates, all wearing caps and gowns, their voices overlapping in a symphony of excitement. Emma paused at the edge of the crowd, watching as her peers chatted animatedly about their next steps. She overheard snippets of conversations. Someone was going to study engineering, another was taking a gap year to travel, someone else had already landed a job at a prestigious company. It all seemed so perfect, so planned. They all knew what they were doing next. But Emma didn't know what came next for her. In fact, she didn't even know where she wanted to go. For the past few months, everyone had been asking her the same question, "What's next for you, Emma?" And all she could do was smile weakly, offering up vague answers like, "I'm figuring it out," or "I'll figure it out soon." But deep down, she had no idea. She hadn't even applied to college, hadn't looked into any potential career paths. She hadn't had the energy to do any of it. She turned away from the crowd, unable to face the joyful chaos around her. She felt like an imposter, like she didn't belong there with all the people who had it together. And as she walked away, she couldn't help but wonder, will anyone care after today? The question lingered in her mind, unspoken but heavy. What would happen to her after graduation? Would she simply fade into the background, forgotten by the people she had spent 4 years with? Would she even be missed? She found a quiet spot by the bleachers, tucked away from the celebration. Leaning against the cool metal, she allowed herself a moment of vulnerability. Her breath hitched in her chest as she finally allowed the tears to fall. Why does everything feel so heavy? She wondered. She had always been the quiet one, the one who kept to herself and blended into the background. But now, as graduation marked the end of this chapter, she realized just how invisible she had truly been. The crowd outside seemed so far away now, as if Emma was in a world of her own. She could hear their laughter, but it felt hollow. She couldn't connect with any of it. The people she had shared classes with for years were moving on to bigger things, while she was left standing in this limbo, unsure of what came next. It's just one day, Emma, she told herself, wiping her eyes and trying to pull herself together. Just one day. But even as she repeated the words, a part of her didn't believe it. This was a turning point, and the uncertainty of the future was all-consuming. She wanted so badly to feel the same sense of hope and excitement that everyone else seemed to have. But instead, she felt like she was standing on the edge of a cliff, unsure whether she should jump or retreat. The knock on the door was faint at first, but it cut through the fog of her thoughts. Emma lifted her head, startled, as if waking from a dream. She wiped her eyes quickly, trying to compose herself before she stood up. But when she opened the door, she wasn't expecting who was standing there. The door creaked open, and there he was, Principal Thompson. Emma blinked, unsure if she was imagining things. Why was he here? And why, of all people, was he standing in front of her at this moment? Emma, he said softly, his voice kind but firm. I hope I'm not disturbing you, but I wanted to check in. Graduation day can bring up a lot of emotions, and I know it's a lot to process. She stood frozen for a moment, still trying to process the surprise of seeing him. The principal was the last person she ever expected to show up at her door. He was always so busy with school administration, rarely engaging with students outside of formal meetings. Emma's gaze flickered to the hallway behind him, empty, quiet, and then back to the man who seemed to see something in her that she hadn't seen in herself. No, you're not disturbing me, she replied, forcing a smile that felt as awkward as it sounded. I just wasn't expecting anyone. I know, Principal Thompson said, stepping into the doorway. Graduation can be a whirlwind, and it's easy to feel lost in all of it. It's okay to feel unsure, Emma. She blinked, feeling a lump rise in her throat. How did he know? She hadn't said a word to anyone about the heaviness she felt in her chest, the anxiety that seemed to follow her around like a shadow. How did he know that she felt like her life was about to fall apart? Emma shifted nervously, feeling her throat tighten. I don't know what I'm supposed to do now. Everyone else seems to have their life planned out. They know where they're going, what they want. But I feel like I'm just drifting. Principal Thompson studied her for a moment, his gaze soft yet intense. I get that. I really do. It's easy to feel overwhelmed, especially when you think everyone else has it together. But Emma, you don't have to have it all figured out today. Life isn't a straight line. It's full of twists and turns. And sometimes it's about finding your own path, not following someone else's. His words hung in the air, and for a moment, Emma was speechless. She had never expected him to be so understanding. He wasn't just the principal. He was someone who had witnessed hundreds of students graduate and move on, each with their own struggles and hopes. Look, he continued, his voice quieter now, I know you've always been a bit more reserved than some of the other students. But I also know there's more to you than you realize. You're intelligent, thoughtful, and you care about the people around you. You're more capable than you give yourself credit for. Emma felt her breath catch in her chest. No one had ever spoken to her like this before, especially not her parents, who had always expected perfection from her. They never talked to her about her strengths, only about her shortcomings. She had always been the quiet one, the one who stayed out of the way, the one who didn't stand out. But here was Principal Thompson, telling her that she had potential. "You've got a lot to offer, Emma," he said, his eyes earnest. "And I want to help you figure out what comes next." Emma blinked, trying to absorb his words. "What do you mean? What do you think I should do?" He smiled gently. "There's a local community center that needs an intern for the summer. It's a chance for you to try something new, see where your strengths really lie. It's not about having it all figured out right now. It's about taking a step in the right direction and seeing where it leads. Would you be interested in that?" Emma felt a sudden rush of emotions, confusion, relief, and a glimmer of hope she hadn't allowed herself to feel in months. She didn't know what to say, so she just stood there, her mouth slightly open, processing the unexpected opportunity before her. I don't know," she murmured, feeling the weight of her own self-doubt creeping back in. "I'm not sure I'm ready for something like that." Principal Thompson nodded, his expression understanding but determined. "That's normal, Emma. It's okay to feel uncertain. But remember, sometimes the best way to find out who you really are is by taking a chance. And you don't have to do it alone. You'll have support." The mention of support felt like a lifeline. She had never been good at asking for help, never wanted to burden anyone with her insecurities. But here, standing in front of this man who had always been a distant authority figure, she felt like maybe she wasn't as alone as she thought. "I'll think about it," Emma said, her voice quieter now. "Thank you for offering this." Principal Thompson smiled warmly. "I believe in you, Emma. You've got more strength inside you than you realize. Don't sell yourself short." With that, he gave her a nod and turned to leave, but before he did, he paused for a moment. "If you decide to take the internship, just let me know. I'll help you get started." And with that, he was gone, leaving Emma standing in the hallway, her mind racing. The knock on her door had left her speechless, but it also left her with something she hadn't had in a long time: hope. As she sat back down on her bed, her hands still trembling from the encounter, Emma found herself staring at the space in front of her, wondering if she could take that step. The idea of an internship was terrifying. It meant leaving the familiar behind, stepping into the unknown. But there was something about it that felt right, like it could be the beginning of something new. For the first time in what felt like forever, Emma allowed herself to imagine a future that didn't feel so bleak. Maybe Principal Thompson was right. Maybe she didn't need to have everything figured out today. Maybe it was enough to take that first step, no matter how small. She stood up slowly, her mind still swirling with possibilities, and looked out the window. The sky was darkening now, the day slowly fading into evening. For the first time that day, Emma didn't feel so alone. She had a choice. And for the first time, that choice didn't seem so impossible. As the wind picked up outside, she felt a spark of hope stir in her chest. Maybe, just maybe, this was the start of something new. The days after graduation blurred together for Emma. She spent the next few days grappling with the decision Principal Thompson had presented to her. The internship at the community center lingered in the back of her mind like a small, quiet voice urging her to take action. Yet every time she thought about it, a heavy weight settled in her chest. It wasn't that she didn't want to give it a try. It was the fear of failure, the fear of stepping out of her comfort zone that held her back. She had spent years staying in the shadows, watching others take the spotlight, and now she was being asked to take a leap into the unknown. Her parents had always expected the best from her: top grades, high achievements, the perfect future. And while they had congratulated her on graduating, the underlying pressure was always there, like an unspoken commandment hanging over her head. You need to do something big now. Something meaningful. But what did meaningful even mean? "Mom," Emma called out one evening, sitting at the kitchen table, her fingers running nervously over the edge of her coffee mug. "I've been thinking about something." Her mother looked up from the stove, where she was stirring something in a pot. She didn't seem to register the weight of Emma's tone, busy with her usual routine of getting dinner ready. "Oh, what is it, sweetie?" Emma hesitated. She could already feel the walls closing in. What if they don't understand? What if they think I'm wasting my time? "I was offered an internship," she started slowly, "at a community center. It's for the summer. I don't know if it's what I should be doing, but it's something." Her mother paused, her wooden spoon hanging midair. Emma could feel the tension between them, like her mother was about to weigh her options, preparing to hand down a verdict. "You're sure this is a good idea?" Her voice was soft, but the skepticism was clear in her eyes. "I mean, it's a community center, Emma. Isn't there a better opportunity you could pursue? Something more professional?" Emma swallowed hard. The words stung, but she kept her voice steady. "I'm not sure what I want to do yet, Mom. I'm just trying to figure it out." Her mother's face softened a little, but the underlying concern was still there. "I understand, sweetheart. But you've always been so focused on school. You've worked so hard for this. I just don't want you to lose momentum." Emma nodded, knowing exactly what her mom meant. Losing momentum. Losing her chance at a real future. The pressure to be perfect, to know exactly where she was headed, felt suffocating. It made her question everything, especially when she wasn't even sure where she was headed herself. "Maybe it's not about momentum," Emma said quietly, almost more to herself than to her mother. "Maybe it's about finding my own path." Her mother sighed, the weight of the conversation settling between them. "Just remember, Emma, you don't have to rush into anything. You have plenty of time to figure it out." The words sounded reassuring, but Emma didn't feel reassured. In fact, they only seemed to amplify the quiet panic she felt, the idea that she was running out of time to get things right. That if she didn't make the right choice now, she would fall behind. She spent the next few days going back and forth in her mind. The internship seemed like the right thing to do, but the fear of failure gnawed at her. What if she wasn't cut out for this? What if she made a mistake? What if, by the time she figured it all out, everyone else would have already moved on with their perfect futures? Each time she found herself on the verge of making a decision, doubt crept in, and she'd push it away. But then, she would remember Principal Thompson's words, "It's not about having it all figured out today. It's about taking a step in the right direction." Finally, after a restless night of tossing and turning, Emma decided to take the first step. The next morning, she grabbed her phone and sent a quick message to Principal Thompson. "I'm in. I'll take the internship. Thank you for giving me the opportunity." As soon as she hit send, she felt a strange mix of relief and fear. Relief that she had made a decision. Fear that she might regret it later. But for the first time in a long while, she felt like she had taken control, like she had made a choice for herself, not for anyone else. That afternoon, Emma walked to the community center to meet with the program coordinator, a woman named Ms. Lopez. The building was small but welcoming, nestled in the heart of town. As Emma stepped inside, she was greeted by the soft hum of conversation, the sound of children laughing in the background, and the familiar scent of coffee wafting from a nearby kitchen. Ms. Lopez was a woman in her late 30s with a warm smile and a no-nonsense attitude. She shook Emma's hand firmly, her eyes assessing but kind. "So, you're the new intern," Ms. Lopez said. "We're happy to have you here. This isn't the most glamorous job, but it's rewarding. You'll be helping out with after-school programs, organizing events, and most importantly, getting to know the kids." Emma nodded, unsure of what to expect, but eager to dive in. She had always been shy and reserved, but maybe this was the challenge she needed. Maybe this would help her figure out who she was and what she wanted. Over the next few weeks, Emma threw herself into the internship with everything she had. At first, it was awkward. She wasn't used to working with kids, and the pace of the community center was faster than she had anticipated. But slowly, she began to find her rhythm. She helped organize activities for the kids, mentored a few of them who were struggling in school, and even started planning a community event for the upcoming summer festival. With each passing day, Emma felt herself opening up a little more. She began to understand that the pressure she had felt about getting it all figured out wasn't as important as the process of discovering what she enjoyed. The kids at the center became a source of unexpected joy, and the connections she made with the other staff members gave her a sense of belonging she hadn't realized she'd been missing. One afternoon, as Emma was preparing for a meeting with Ms. Lopez, she overheard a conversation between a few of the older kids. They were talking about their plans for the future, comparing their summer jobs and talking about their college dreams. Emma felt a pang in her chest. They have it all figured out, she thought. They know what they want. But then she realized something. She didn't have to have it all figured out. It was okay to take things one step at a time, to try new things and see where they led. It was okay to make mistakes along the way. When she walked into the meeting with Ms. Lopez, she felt a quiet confidence she hadn't felt in a long time. As Ms. Lopez looked over some of Emma's ideas for the summer event, she smiled. "You're doing great, Emma," she said. "I knew you had it in you." And for the first time, Emma believed her. Weeks passed, and Emma's life began to feel less like a collection of disconnected moments and more like a story that was slowly unfolding. Her internship at the community center was a whirlwind of events, laughter, and growing friendships. She was finding her place, learning more about herself than she had ever expected. But there were still moments when doubt crept in. In the quiet hours after the kids had gone home and the center had settled into a calm stillness, Emma often found herself staring into space, wondering if she was making the right decision. Was this what she was supposed to be doing? Was she really good enough for this? It was a Tuesday afternoon when the turning point came. Emma had spent the morning organizing supplies for the summer event, hanging up colorful banners and setting up booths for a carnival-style fundraiser. The kids had been helping out, but Emma was in charge of the logistics, making sure everything ran smoothly, keeping track of time, and solving problems as they arose. It was stressful, but it was the kind of stress she had never experienced before, the kind that made her feel alive. She loved the rush of running around, of balancing different tasks and responsibilities. For the first time, Emma was taking charge of something bigger than herself, and it felt good. Then, as she was in the middle of making a checklist, her phone buzzed. It was a message from her mom. "We need to talk. Can you come home after work today?" Emma frowned, her stomach twisting with uncertainty. Her mother had never been one to call for a talk unless something was seriously wrong. With a sigh, she quickly responded, "Sure, I'll be home after my shift." The rest of the day was a blur of activity. Emma tried to focus on her tasks, but the anticipation of the conversation with her mom hung over her like a dark cloud. As she drove home, she couldn't help but replay all the times her mom had expressed concern about her choices, about the community center, about her future. When she walked into the house later that evening, her mother was sitting at the kitchen table, looking unusually serious. Emma's father was there too, his face lined with concern. "Sit down, Emma," her mother said softly, gesturing to the chair opposite her. Emma's heart started to race. The conversation she had been dreading was finally happening. "Mom, Dad, what's going on?" she asked, her voice a mix of confusion and nervousness. Her mother looked at her with a sigh. "We've been talking, and we think it's time for you to consider other options. You've been at that community center for a while now, and it's a nice thing to do, but it's not a career. We think you need to focus on your future, on building a real career." Emma's chest tightened as she felt the familiar pressure building up. She had known this was coming. Her parents had always emphasized the importance of having a real job, of earning respect and recognition in a professional world. The community center wasn't real to them. It was just a side project, a detour. I don't want to disappoint you, Emma said softly, trying to keep her voice steady. But I like what I'm doing. I'm learning new things. I'm helping people. It's not just a side project. Her father leaned forward, his voice firm. We understand that you're enjoying yourself, Emma. But what about your future? What about the career you're going to build? The job market is tough, and you need to think about your long-term goals. Emma felt a knot in her stomach. I am thinking about my future. This is helping me figure out what I want to do. I don't know where it's going yet, but I'm learning. Her mother shook her head. You're wasting time, Emma. Time you should be spending on building a career that will provide for you, that will secure your future. You can't keep waiting for things to fall into place. The words stung, cutting deeper than she had anticipated. Emma felt the weight of their expectations crash down on her, and for a moment, she couldn't speak. She wanted to defend herself, to tell them how much this internship was changing her, but the words wouldn't come. I don't want to waste my time either, she whispered, looking down at her hands. But I don't know how to know what's right. Everything feels so uncertain. I just don't want to make the wrong choice. Her father's voice softened slightly, but the pressure in his tone was still there. No one expects you to have everything figured out, Emma. But you can't just sit around and hope that it all falls into place. You need to take control of your future. The conversation dragged on for what felt like hours, with her parents insisting that she needed to think more seriously about her future, while Emma tried, and failed, to explain that she didn't have all the answers. She didn't know what was next, but she was doing her best to figure it out. When the conversation finally ended, Emma retreated to her room, feeling more lost than ever. Was she wasting time? Was the community center just a distraction? But as the evening wore on, something shifted inside her. She sat on her bed, thinking back to everything Principal Thompson had said, to the support she had received from Ms. Lopez and the kids at the center. She remembered the feeling of accomplishment she had felt when she organized the event, the way her heart had raced with excitement as she took charge. No, this wasn't a waste of time. This was part of her journey. She didn't have all the answers, but she was learning. And that was worth something. The next morning, as she walked into the community center, Emma felt a renewed sense of determination. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing for sure: she wasn't going to let anyone else's expectations dictate her path. She had to carve out her own way. Ms. Lopez greeted her with a smile as she walked in. "How's everything going?" Emma smiled back, her confidence now solid. "Good. I'm starting to really see the bigger picture. I think I'm beginning to understand what this is all about." Ms. Lopez raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What do you mean?" Emma paused for a moment, collecting her thoughts. "I think I'm figuring out what I want to do. And I know it's not going to happen overnight. But I'm taking steps, one at a time." Ms. Lopez nodded approvingly. "That's all anyone can ask for, Emma. You're on the right track." As Emma moved forward, she realized that this was the moment she had been waiting for. It wasn't about knowing everything or having it all figured out. It was about trusting herself enough to take each step, knowing that even when things didn't make sense, she was still moving forward. For the first time in a long while, Emma felt like she was exactly where she needed to be. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Summer was fast approaching, and with it, the event at the community center. Emma had been working tirelessly with Ms. Lopez and the team, planning every little detail for the upcoming carnival fundraiser. The center was buzzing with energy as the kids helped decorate, prepare games, and get everything ready for the big day. Emma, who had never been particularly comfortable in leadership roles, found herself organizing and leading meetings, making decisions, and even delegating tasks to others. The more she took charge, the more she felt at ease in her own skin. For the first time in a long while, she felt capable. But just as things seemed to be falling into place, the unexpected happened. It was a warm Thursday afternoon, 2 weeks before the fundraiser, when Emma received a phone call that would change everything. She was sitting at the front desk of the community center, sorting through paperwork, when her phone buzzed. It was from her mother. "We need to talk." Emma's stomach dropped. It was the same phrasing as the last time. She could hear the tension in her mother's voice, even through the brief text. Without thinking, she stood up quickly, pacing the small front area of the center. She had no idea what this could be about, but she knew it couldn't be good. Was she about to be told she was wasting her time again? Was she about to be urged to go down a different path? Taking a deep breath, Emma called her mother back. "Mom," Emma said, trying to keep the edge of anxiety out of her voice. "Emma, it's your father," her mother said, her voice thick with worry. "He's been sick, and it's getting worse. He's at the hospital right now. I'm really worried." Emma's heart sank. "What happened? Is he okay?" Her mother's voice quivered. "He's been having trouble breathing for a few days now. We thought it was just a cold, but the doctors say it's something more serious. We don't know yet what's going on, but I need you here." Emma didn't even think twice. "I'm on my way." She ended the call, her mind racing. She barely registered the drive to the hospital, her hands gripping the steering wheel tightly as her thoughts scattered in 1,000 directions. The hospital room felt cold, clinical. Her father lay in the bed, his face pale, his breathing shallow and labored. When Emma entered, her mother was sitting beside the bed, tears in her eyes. She stood up when Emma walked in, pulling her into a tight hug. "I'm scared, Emma. I don't know what's going to happen." Emma's own heart ached as she held her mother. She had always been so strong for them, and now it was her turn to be strong for her. The doctors were still running tests, but the uncertainty was suffocating. Emma sat by her father's side, watching his chest rise and fall with each slow, labored breath. The world outside seemed to move in slow motion. The vibrant life at the community center felt so far away in that moment. She stayed with her family through the night, barely sleeping, her mind constantly drifting between fear for her father and the weight of what was waiting for her back at the center. The fundraiser was still 2 weeks away. The kids needed her. Ms. Lopez was counting on her. The next morning, Emma knew what she had to do. Her father's condition remained uncertain, and it didn't seem like he would be out of the hospital anytime soon. Her mother needed her, and the whole family was on edge. But Emma also knew that she had responsibilities at the community center that she couldn't just abandon. She wasn't sure how to manage everything, but she knew she couldn't let the event fall apart. After a few hours at the hospital, Emma made the difficult decision to leave and go back to the community center. Her heart was heavy, but she couldn't let everything she'd worked for slip away. She walked into the center, her face pale from the stress of the past 24 hours. Ms. Lopez was at her desk, reviewing paperwork for the event. She looked up when Emma entered and instantly noticed the change in her demeanor. "Emma," Ms. Lopez said, her voice soft. "Is everything okay? You look exhausted." Emma swallowed hard, fighting back the tears that threatened to spill. "My dad's in the hospital," she said, her voice shaky. "I don't know what's going to happen yet, but I need to keep going with the fundraiser." Ms. Lopez stood up immediately. "I'm so sorry to hear that, and of course, we'll support you however you need. But, Emma, you don't have to carry all of this on your own. You don't have to be here if you need to be with your family." Emma shook her head. "I can't just leave. I'm part of this. And I don't know how to manage both, but I have to try." Ms. Lopez gave her a long, thoughtful look before nodding. "All right, but don't burn yourself out, okay? Let's talk through what's most important, and we'll figure it out together. You're not alone in this." For the first time in a long time, Emma allowed herself to feel the comfort of someone else's support. She realized then that she didn't have to do everything by herself. It was okay to lean on others when things got tough. And so, she threw herself back into work. She spent the next few days balancing long hours at the center with quick visits to the hospital to check on her father. The stress of managing it all weighed heavily on her, but as the event drew closer, Emma found herself becoming more and more focused on what needed to be done. It was as though the chaos of the past few days had ignited something inside her. She was no longer the shy, unsure girl who had walked into the community center months ago. She had become a leader, someone who could handle challenges, no matter how daunting they seemed. The day of the fundraiser arrived, and the center was buzzing with excitement. The kids ran around helping to set up last-minute decorations, and Emma was in her element, organizing everything. Despite the overwhelming stress, despite the uncertainty surrounding her father's health, she was determined to make this event a success. It wasn't just for the center, it was for her. For the person she was becoming. As the sun began to set, the event kicked off. Laughter and music filled the air. Families walked through the doors, enjoying the games, food, and festivities. Emma watched as everything came together. The booth she had set up, the volunteers she had trained, the kids who had worked tirelessly alongside her. It was a success, far beyond what she had imagined. She stood at the center of it all, watching the smiles of the kids, the gratitude in Ms. Lopez's eyes, and the joy in the crowd. In that moment, she realized that this was what she had been looking for. She wasn't just helping out at a community center, she was building something. Something meaningful. And for the first time in a long while, Emma allowed herself to feel proud. But just as the evening was winding down, her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was a message from her mom. "Your dad's awake. The doctors think he's going to be okay." The weight that had been pressing on Emma's chest for days lifted, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Emma felt a wave of relief wash over her. She was facing challenges, yes, but she had made it through, and she was stronger for it. The days after the fundraiser were a whirlwind. The community center had raised more funds than they'd hoped for, and the event was deemed a huge success. Emma had been the driving force behind it all, and for the first time in her life, she felt like she was truly making a difference. The overwhelming sense of accomplishment was enough to lift her spirits, but her father's health was still on her mind. The doctors had been cautiously optimistic, but the uncertainty of the future weighed heavily on her. She had spent hours at the hospital over the past week, trying to balance her responsibilities at the center with being there for her family. The strain had taken its toll on her. She was exhausted, both mentally and physically. Yet, despite everything, Emma felt an odd sense of calm. Maybe it was the relief that her father was finally on the mend, or perhaps it was because she was beginning to find her place in the world. She was learning what it meant to be a leader, to make tough decisions, and to take control of her own future. One evening, after a long day of organizing more events at the center, Emma received a text from Principal Thompson. She hadn't heard from him in weeks, and his message was both simple and direct. "Can we meet tomorrow? I think we need to talk." Emma's stomach tightened as she read the message. What could he want to talk about? Was it about her internship at the community center? Was he questioning her future plans? She hadn't expected to hear from him again, and now that she had, 100 different possibilities raced through her mind. The next day, Emma walked into the principal's office, her mind racing with thoughts and doubts. Principal Thompson was sitting behind his desk, a warm but serious expression on his face as he looked up from the papers in front of him. "Emma," he said with a slight smile. "Come in. I've been meaning to have a conversation with you." "Sure," Emma replied, sitting down in the chair opposite him. Her heart pounded in her chest. She wasn't sure if she was ready to hear whatever it was he had to say. "I've been following your progress," Principal Thompson began, his voice calm but serious. "I've seen the work you've been doing at the community center, and I have to say, I'm impressed. You've really stepped up." Emma felt a wave of warmth wash over her. "Thank you, Mr. Thompson. I've learned so much there." It's been a huge opportunity for me. He nodded, then leaned forward slightly. But I also know that you've been struggling with your future. I understand the pressure your parents have put on you to find a real career. I know you're torn between pursuing this work at the community center and following a more traditional career path. Emma's throat tightened, and she nodded, not trusting herself to speak just yet. She didn't know how much Principal Thompson knew, but it was clear he understood the conflict that had been brewing inside her for months. Her parents' expectations and the reality of her passion for the community center had created a rift inside her that she couldn't seem to bridge. I won't lie to you, Emma, he continued, his gaze steady. You have a lot of potential. You could go into many different fields, and you could be successful in any number of careers. But I want you to understand something important. It's not about what you do. It's about why you do it. Emma looked at him, confused. What do you mean? Principal Thompson leaned back in his chair, folding his hands together. What I'm saying is that it's not just about having a real job, Emma. It's about finding something that makes you feel alive, something that makes you want to jump out of bed in the morning. That's the real measure of success. Emma sat there, stunned. She had never really thought about it that way. She had been so focused on meeting everyone else's expectations, her parents, society, even her own doubts, that she hadn't taken a step back to ask herself what she truly wanted. Do you think you could find that here? Principal Thompson asked, his voice softer now. Emma swallowed hard, trying to gather her thoughts. For so long, she had been afraid of making the wrong choice, afraid of disappointing her parents and everyone around her. But now, sitting here, listening to him, she began to realize that she had already found what she was looking for. It wasn't about following a predefined path, it was about creating her own. Yes, she said slowly, her voice filled with determination. I think I have. I've realized that I want to keep doing this, helping people, leading others, making a difference. It's not about a title or a paycheck. It's about purpose. Principal Thompson smiled, clearly pleased with her response. I knew you would come to that conclusion. And I think you're on the right track. But remember, Emma, you don't have to have it all figured out right now. This is a journey, not a destination. And you've already taken a huge step. As Emma walked out of the principal's office, she felt lighter than she had in weeks. The burden of her parents' expectations had been weighing her down for so long, but Principal Thompson had given her the clarity she needed. It was okay not to have all the answers. It was okay to choose her own path, even if it didn't look like what others expected. She was no longer afraid of the future. She was ready to embrace it, with all its uncertainty and possibility. When she arrived back at the community center later that day, Emma felt a sense of peace that she hadn't experienced in a long time. She was no longer caught between two worlds. She had found her own way forward, and that path was full of promise. As the evening rolled on, she helped prepare the space for an upcoming event, working alongside the kids she had grown so close to. Their laughter filled the air as they decorated, and Emma couldn't help but smile. She knew she was where she needed to be. But just as everything seemed to fall into place, Emma received another message. This time, it wasn't from her mother or Principal Thompson. It was from Ms. Lopez, and it read, "I need to talk to you. Something important has come up." Emma's heart skipped a beat. What now? The words in the message from Ms. Lopez lingered in Emma's mind as she sat at her desk, staring at her phone. "I need to talk to you. Something important has come up." The words felt heavy, like they carried a weight that Emma couldn't quite place. She quickly typed a response, agreeing to meet at the community center as soon as possible. As she made her way through the now familiar halls of the center, Emma's mind raced. What could it be? Had something gone wrong with the fundraiser? Were they having financial issues? Or maybe something had happened with the kids. The thought alone made her stomach tighten. Ms. Lopez was like a second mother to Emma. The last thing she wanted was for something bad to befall the community center that had become her second home. Emma pushed open the door to Ms. Lopez's office. The older woman was sitting behind her desk, her hands folded together, a look of deep concern etched across her face. "Ms. Lopez," Emma asked, her voice tentative. "What's going on?" Ms. Lopez motioned for Emma to sit down. Her eyes softened, but Emma could see the hint of worry there. "I've been meaning to tell you something," Ms. Lopez began, her voice calm yet filled with an undercurrent of urgency. "And I think it's time you knew." Emma's heart pounded in her chest. The words that followed seemed to hang in the air for a moment before they hit her with full force. "The community center is facing serious financial troubles. The funds we raised at the carnival, while helpful, aren't enough to cover the ongoing costs of keeping the doors open. We've been getting by for months, but it's starting to feel like we might not make it much longer. The building is aging and repairs are piling up. The grants and donations we usually rely on haven't been coming through like they used to." The room felt like it was closing in on Emma. She had poured so much of herself into the center, and to hear that it was in danger of shutting down was almost too much to bear. She opened her mouth to speak, but the words caught in her throat. "I don't want to panic you," Ms. Lopez continued, her voice gentle but firm. "But we need a major change, and we need it soon. I've been exploring every option I can think of, reaching out to local businesses, trying to secure more grants, but I'm running out of leads." Emma blinked, trying to process the information. The community center, the place that had become her refuge, the place where she felt like she was truly making a difference, was in jeopardy. It felt impossible to imagine it shutting down. But the reality was staring her in the face. "What can we do?" Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. She had no idea where to even begin. How could one person make a difference in a situation this big? Ms. Lopez took a deep breath, as though bracing herself for what she was about to say. "I've been thinking a lot about this, and I have an idea. It's a long shot, but it could work. There's a new development happening on the outskirts of town. Construction is already underway, and a lot of businesses are moving in. I've heard rumors that they're looking to support community initiatives, and I think if we pitch a compelling case to them, we might be able to secure enough funding to keep the center going." Emma's pulse quickened. This was it. This was the lifeline they had been waiting for. But as quickly as the spark of hope flared inside her, doubt crept in. "It's going to be a tough sell, though," Ms. Lopez added. "We'll need to put together a proposal, have all the right data, and convince them that we're worth the investment. I'm going to need your help." Emma nodded, her mind already starting to race with ideas. This was what she had been training for. All those hours spent organizing fundraisers, all the time spent in the trenches with the kids. This was the challenge she had been waiting for. It wasn't going to be easy, but Emma was ready to fight for the community center. "How soon do we need to have the proposal ready?" she asked, already thinking about the logistics. Ms. Lopez looked at her seriously. "We have 1 month, Emma. We need to act fast if we want to stand a chance." A sense of determination surged within Emma. This wasn't just about her anymore. It wasn't just about keeping the community center afloat for the kids. It was about everything she had worked for, the relationships she had built, the lives she had touched, and the future she had found for herself. She couldn't let it all slip away. "I'm in," Emma said, her voice filled with confidence. "We're going to do this." Over the next few days, Emma threw herself into the project. She worked closely with Ms. Lopez, brainstorming ideas for the proposal. They created budgets, outlined potential programs they could offer to the new businesses in town, and even came up with a list of community members who could provide testimonials. The pressure was mounting, but Emma was determined. She spent long hours at the community center, skipping meals and sacrificing sleep in the process. But every time she looked around at the kids she had come to love, at the staff who had supported her, she felt that the cause was worth it. This place had given her so much, now it was her turn to give back. But the road wasn't without its obstacles. The pressure of the impending deadline and the weight of what was at stake began to wear on Emma. The mounting stress from working around the clock started to take a toll on her health. She was constantly exhausted, and her thoughts seemed to blur together. But through it all, there was one thing that kept her going: the thought of the kids and the community members who relied on the center. One evening, after another long day of work, Emma sat alone in the conference room, reviewing the proposal. Her eyes were heavy, and her mind was scattered, but she couldn't stop now. As she glanced over the draft one last time, she felt a tap on her shoulder. Startled, Emma turned around to see Ms. Lopez standing behind her, holding 2 cups of coffee. "You've been working so hard," Ms. Lopez said with a gentle smile. "I thought you might need a break." Emma looked at the coffee, the warmth of the cup a welcome relief. She smiled back, grateful for Ms. Lopez's kindness. "I'm just trying to get everything right," she replied, taking the cup. "We're so close. I can feel it." Ms. Lopez sat down beside her, sipping her coffee. "I know you're giving everything you have, Emma. But don't forget to take care of yourself, too. We can't do this if we burn ourselves out." Emma nodded, though she wasn't entirely sure how to slow down. But in that moment, as she sat across from Ms. Lopez, surrounded by papers and notes, she realized something important. She wasn't alone. No matter how hard the road got, she had people in her corner who believed in her, who cared about her success. And together, they were going to make sure the community center survived. The days leading up to the submission of the proposal felt like a blur. Emma was barely keeping her head above water, juggling endless revisions, meetings, and phone calls. Each day seemed to bring more pressure and more responsibility, but she never wavered. Her determination to save the community center had become the driving force of her life, pushing her forward even when everything seemed to be falling apart. Despite the overwhelming stress, Emma couldn't shake the sense of camaraderie that had developed among the staff and volunteers. Everyone was pulling together, working as one, fueled by the hope that the proposal could truly save everything they had built. There was something magical about the way people came together in times of crisis. Emma had witnessed it over and over again at the community center, but now, as they all worked toward a common goal, it felt like more than just a fight for survival. It felt like a fight for something far greater, a future. Still, the clock was ticking, and the proposal had to be perfect. The pressure mounted with every passing day, but Emma remained focused, telling herself that this was her chance to show what she was capable of. It wasn't just about saving the center. It was about proving to herself that she was worthy of the responsibility, that she had the skills to create something lasting. On the morning of the deadline, Emma arrived at the community center before the sun had even risen. Her eyes were tired, her body sore from the late nights spent hunched over her computer, but there was something different in her step today. Today, they would finish what they had started. As she walked into the conference room, Ms. Lopez was already there, waiting for her with a reassuring smile. The table was covered with papers, final drafts of the proposal, printed out and ready to go. "You look like you could use a nap," Ms. Lopez teased, pushing a cup of coffee toward her. Emma smiled tiredly, accepting the cup. "I might take you up on that after we submit this." "You've done amazing work, Emma," Ms. Lopez said, her voice sincere. "I know how hard this has been on you. And I want you to know, no matter what happens with the proposal, you've already proven something important." Emma raised an eyebrow, confused. "What do you mean?" Ms. Lopez leaned forward, her eyes softening. "You've proven that you have what it takes to lead. You've shown everyone here what it means to care about something so much that you'll fight for it with everything you have. That's not something everyone can say." Emma's heart swelled at the words. She hadn't realized how much she needed to hear that until now. Despite everything she had done, the sleepless nights, the relentless work, she had been questioning whether she was truly capable of seeing it through. But now, with Ms. Lopez's words of encouragement, Emma realized something important. She had already succeeded. No matter the outcome of the proposal, she had already proven to herself that she was capable of making a real difference. Thanks, Emma said quietly, her voice thick with emotion. I really needed to hear that. Ms. Lopez nodded, giving her a reassuring smile. Now let's get this proposal sent off and see what happens. Together, they carefully reviewed the documents one last time. Emma's fingers trembled as she clicked the send button, officially submitting the proposal to the developers. The weight of the moment felt surreal. This was it. The culmination of everything they had worked for. The future of the community center rested in the hands of the decision-makers now. The next few days were agonizing. Emma couldn't focus on anything else. Every phone call, every email, every knock on the door made her heart race with anticipation. She'd check her email 100 times a day, waiting for a response. But the silence was deafening. As the days wore on, Emma's frustration grew. She had given everything she had to this cause, and now it felt like she was left waiting for something she couldn't control. She was starting to doubt whether it had been enough. Then, one Friday afternoon, as she was helping out with an after-school program, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She quickly excused herself and stepped outside, her hands shaking as she unlocked the phone. It was an email from the developers. Her heart pounded in her chest as she clicked it open. The subject line simply read, "Proposal Review." Emma took a deep breath before reading the contents of the message. Dear Emma Lopez and the Community Center team, thank you for your detailed and compelling proposal. After careful consideration, we are pleased to inform you that we would like to move forward with a partnership with the Community Center. We believe in the work you are doing and are excited to support you in your mission to provide a safe space for the children and families of our community. We are prepared to offer a substantial donation to help fund the center's operations and renovations. We will be in touch shortly to arrange the next steps. We look forward to working with you. Best regards, the development team. Emma stood frozen for a moment, her mind struggling to comprehend what she had just read. Then, slowly, the weight of the words sank in. They had done it. The community center was saved. She wanted to scream, to jump for joy, to tell everyone she knew. But in that moment, she simply let out a shaky breath, feeling a deep sense of relief wash over her. It had worked. The countless hours of hard work, the stress, the sleepless nights, it had all paid off. The community center was going to survive. More than that, it was going to thrive. As Emma walked back into the gym, her eyes met Ms. Lopez's. The older woman was waiting, a knowing smile on her face. Emma didn't need to say anything. Ms. Lopez already knew. Without a word, Emma handed her phone over. Ms. Lopez read the email, and then both of them broke into laughter. The tension of the past few weeks melted away in an instant. We did it, Emma whispered, almost disbelieving. Ms. Lopez pulled her into a hug. You did it, Emma. You were the one who made this happen. The two of them stood there for a moment, embracing, taking in the gravity of what they had just accomplished. This wasn't just a victory for the community center, it was a victory for Emma. She had fought for what she believed in, and now she had something even more precious than a job or title. She had a purpose, a future, and a community that believed in her. As the sound of children laughing and playing echoed through the center, Emma knew one thing for sure. This was just the beginning. The week following the announcement felt like a dream. Emma and Ms. Lopez spent the next several days celebrating their victory with the staff, volunteers, and the community members who had been instrumental in keeping the center alive. The developers had already arranged their first meeting, and Emma couldn't wait to start discussing the next steps. Though Emma had always been a planner, there was a sense of uncertainty about the future that gnawed at her. The community center's success wasn't just about the funding, it was about making sure they used it wisely. They had to balance expansion with maintaining the heart of what made the center so special. She knew that with the money coming in, the pressure to get everything right was higher than ever. That first meeting with the developers was a whirlwind. As Emma sat at the table, surrounded by professionals in suits, she couldn't help but feel a bit out of place. It wasn't that she didn't belong, it was that this was all happening so fast. The developers were eager to get the ball rolling and to make sure the community center became a central part of the new development. The plans they proposed were grand: new equipment for the kids, a revamped computer lab, even plans to open a job training program for adults in the community. But as the conversation continued, Emma began to feel a little uneasy. Every time they mentioned the future, there was an underlying tone of growth that didn't sit well with her. She knew the center needed change, but she also knew that it couldn't lose its soul in the process. The heart of the community center was the people, the kids, the parents, the volunteers who had been showing up year after year. It was what had kept her coming back. As the meeting concluded, Emma and Ms. Lopez shared a brief moment of silence outside the conference room. Emma ran her hand through her hair, a little overwhelmed by everything they'd discussed. "Are we moving too fast?" Emma asked, her voice uncertain. "I mean, I get that we need to improve and expand, but I don't want to lose what we've built." Ms. Lopez smiled knowingly and placed a hand on Emma's shoulder. "It's natural to feel that way. Change is always scary, especially when it feels like things are moving so quickly. But you're not alone in this. You're leading a team that cares just as much as you do. We're going to make sure we stay true to what makes the center special." Emma took a deep breath, letting her worries go. She had fought hard for this moment, and she wasn't about to let fear dictate how things moved forward. "You're right," she said finally. "Let's make sure we do it right." Over the next several weeks, Emma worked with the developers to refine the plans. Together, they struck a balance between new opportunities and preserving the center's unique community feel. It wasn't easy. There were moments when Emma felt frustrated, when she wanted to throw in the towel. But every time she thought about the kids laughing in the halls, the parents dropping their children off with gratitude in their eyes, Emma knew that the work was worth it. As renovations began, the center came alive in new ways. There were new faces, too. Volunteers from local businesses who were eager to contribute their time and expertise. The building started to look better, brighter, and more welcoming than ever before. But it wasn't just the physical space that was transforming, it was the spirit of the place, too. One day, a few months after the proposal was accepted, Emma sat in her office at the community center, looking over some final reports. She could hear the kids in the background, their laughter and energy filling the air. It had been a long road, but Emma couldn't help but feel a deep sense of satisfaction. As she sat back in her chair, reflecting on everything that had happened, she realized just how much she had grown over the past few months. She had walked into this journey unsure of her place, unsure of what she could offer. But now, with everything falling into place, she could see it clearly. She had found her purpose. Her phone buzzed, snapping her out of her thoughts. It was a message from Ms. Lopez. "We did it, Emma. The new programs are a hit. The kids are thriving. And I just got a thank you card from one of the parents. They said they don't know what they'd do without the center." A smile tugged at the corner of Emma's lips as she read the message. She typed a quick reply, "I couldn't have done it without you. This is just the beginning." Her phone buzzed again. A second message from Ms. Lopez, "You're the reason the center is thriving. Don't ever forget that." Emma's heart swelled as she looked out the window. It had been a rough road, filled with doubt and challenges, but everything had led to this moment. She had made it. The community center was no longer just a place, it was a symbol of resilience, of hope, and of Emma's dedication to the people who needed it most. It was a place where children found a safe space, where adults learned new skills, where families came together. It was everything she had ever wanted to create, and it was thriving. A few months later, as Emma was preparing for another fundraising event, she walked into the center's main hall, the place where it all began. The kids were gathered in the corner, working on a mural together. The staff was scattered around, helping with everything from homework to arts and crafts. The air was filled with a sense of joy, of purpose. Emma stopped for a moment, watching the scene unfold before her. She didn't need to do anything more. She had already done enough. The community center was in good hands. And then she realized something else. It wasn't just the community center that had changed. It was her, too. She had learned to trust herself, to step up when needed, to face her fears, and most importantly, to never give up on something that mattered. Emma walked over to the mural, smiling at the kids who waved at her with excitement. She knelt down beside them, joining in their work. "This looks amazing," she said, her voice warm. "You guys are creating something beautiful." One of the kids looked up at her with a grin. "Just like the center." Her heart swelled with pride. "Exactly," Emma said softly. "Just like the center." The grand reopening of the community center was just around the corner. Emma could hardly believe how far they had come. It seemed like only yesterday she had been walking through the door, overwhelmed and uncertain about her place in the world. Now, the center had a renewed sense of life. It was buzzing with activity every day, kids learning, families connecting, and volunteers coming together to create something bigger than themselves. The anticipation was palpable as the date for the reopening approached. The streets surrounding the center were lined with banners, and the local news had even picked up the story. Emma had become a symbol of hope for the community, a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming odds, change was possible. But as excited as she was, Emma couldn't help but feel a little nervous. She had poured so much of herself into the community center, her time, her heart, her energy. What if, after all of this, it wasn't enough? What if the reopening didn't live up to the expectations everyone had set? "Are you okay?" Ms. Lopez asked one afternoon as Emma sat at her desk, staring at the plans for the event. She could sense the tension in Emma's posture. Emma looked up, trying to force a smile. "Yeah, I'm just thinking about everything. It's a lot of pressure, you know." Ms. Lopez nodded, understanding. "I know, but look at what you've done. You've built this, Emma. Not just the new programs or the renovations, but the spirit of it all. This place means something to people, and that's because of you." Her words had always been a source of comfort for Emma, but today, they felt even more meaningful. Emma had always been afraid of failure, but this moment, this event, wasn't about the outcome. It was about the journey. It was about how far they had come together, how much they had achieved, and how much the center had grown. She had found her purpose in the heart of this community, and that was something no setback could take away. "I just want to make sure we get it right," Emma confessed. "This is a chance for us to show the world what we can do. To show them why this place matters." Ms. Lopez sat down beside her, her voice gentle but firm. "You don't have to prove anything to anyone. You've already done it. Just by being here, by sticking with it, you've made a difference. The rest is just the icing on the cake." Emma let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. Maybe Ms. Lopez was right. Maybe it wasn't about getting everything perfect. Maybe it was just about continuing to move forward and doing the best they could. That's what had gotten them this far, and it was what would carry them through to the future. The day of the grand reopening arrived in a flurry of activity. Emma found herself running around, making sure everything was in place, decorations hung, food ready, volunteers stationed at their posts. The energy was electric as families began to trickle in, some excited to see the changes, others just happy to be back in the place they loved. Emma watched as children ran through the hallways, their laughter filling the air. It was the sound of success. It was the sound of a dream realized. She stood at the entrance, greeting people as they arrived. The familiar faces of parents, volunteers, and community members brought a smile to her face. The moment she had been waiting for was finally here. It was surreal. She had never expected to be the person in charge of something so big, something so impactful. But here she was, at the center of it all. As the crowd continued to pour in, Emma spotted a familiar face in the crowd, her mother. She hadn't seen her in weeks, not since she'd been so wrapped up in the project. Emma had felt guilty for not spending enough time with her, but now, seeing her mother's proud smile, all the guilt melted away. Her mother walked toward her, giving her a tight hug. "You've done something incredible, Emma. I'm so proud of you." "Thanks, Mom," Emma said, feeling a lump form in her throat. "I couldn't have done it without the support of everyone. This place, it's everything to me." "I know," her mom replied. "And it's everything to a lot of people. I can see how much this means to you. You've put your heart and soul into it." Emma nodded, her heart swelling with gratitude. This is just the beginning. As the event continued, Emma took a moment to step outside for a breath of fresh air. She walked across the parking lot, her thoughts wandering to the future. The renovations were just the first step. Now, it was time to focus on sustaining everything they had built. It wasn't going to be easy, but Emma knew she was ready. She had the experience, the team, and the passion to make sure the center remained a vital part of the community for years to come. She stopped for a moment, watching the families filter in and out of the building, all of them touched by the center in some way. Emma had given so much of herself to this place, but in return, it had given her something she had never expected, a deep, unwavering sense of belonging. In that moment, she realized something else. She wasn't just the leader of the community center. She was part of it. She was one of the many threads that wove the fabric of the community together. The center had been there for her when she needed it most, and now she was doing the same for others. It was a beautiful cycle of give and take, one that she would continue to nurture for as long as she could. As the sun began to set, casting a warm golden glow over the center, Emma stood there for a few moments, taking it all in. The future was bright, filled with endless possibilities. She wasn't sure where the next chapter of her life would take her, but she knew one thing for certain. The community center had become a home for her, and in return, she had made it a home for everyone who needed it. As she turned to go back inside, she was met by Ms. Lopez, who had a look of pride in her eyes. "You've done it," Ms. Lopez said quietly. "You've created something truly special here." Emma smiled, her heart full. "We've done it. All of us." And with that, Emma stepped back into the center, ready to take on whatever came next. The journey had been long, filled with challenges and moments of doubt, but it had all led to this, the beginning of something lasting, something that would continue to change lives for years to come. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?